Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
So how are you feeling? Are you feeling ready to share your gifts with the world? Are you ready to bring what you've been learning in your spiritual practice into your lived experience to bless others in their lives? Tonight I'm speaking on living with an undivided heart. We've been in this series of A Path with Heart by Jack Kornfield, his wonderful book. We've been doing it for 16 weeks we've had ahead of us, and the work that we've been doing together, Wednesday Night Satsang, has really been about growing our awareness of our inner spiritual life, our practice, doing healing work, training ourselves in the practice of meditation, and understanding the cycles of spiritual life and the possibilities that are available to us in and through our spiritual practice. And so now this teaching is shifting from, with all the inner work that we've done in grounding ourselves, to working into grounding this practice in our outer self, in our outer experience, our outer life. And so just as there are cycles in our inner spiritual life, there are cycles in our outer lives, right? Cycles in politics, cycles in marriage, cycles in business. And so we can use the mindfulness practice that we have worked up in our inner life to notice how those cycles are appearing in our outer life and bringing mindfulness to that as well. So we learn to be true to ourselves. We bring that authenticity, that truth, into our lived experience and our outer life. The wonderful Mother Teresa said, "We cannot all do great things, but we can do small things with great love." We can do small things with great love, and that's really what we're being called to in bringing our inner spiritual life into our outer life, our outer experience. I found out through this book that in India, when thousands of people would come to Calcutta to serve alongside Mother Teresa and the nuns there in Calcutta, and once they've served, she would send them back home out into their lives, and she told them, now that you've learned to see Christ in the poor of India, go home and serve him in your family, on your street, and in your neighborhood. I am really grateful to be back. I was off last week. I was on vacation, so thank you for everyone did such a beautiful job with the service last week, and my family got to go down to South Padre for a few days, and on that trip we fell in love with sea turtles. Anybody, have you been to South Padre before? A few of us, and they have this place that is a sea turtle rehabilitation center called Sea Turtles, Inc. And we got to go there and we got to see the sea turtles that were being rehabilitated, and my daughter is 5 and she just loved it. We fell in love with these sea turtles, and they all had names and in these different tanks, and we went to this educational program put on by the education director there at this rehabilitation center. And after the presentation, as we found out about the sea turtles and how they ended up in these conditions, some of them had been hit by boats where it damaged their shell, and so they had to be brought in. Some of them lost flippers, and found out if a sea turtle loses 3 or more flippers, then they cannot be put back into the wild. They won't survive. So some of them are lifetimers in this program. And my daughter wanted to speak to the education director, and so we went up, and she went up to her and to ask a question, and she said, "I want to be a vet when I grow up." And the education director said, "Well, you know what you can do now?" And she said, "What?" She said, "When you see trash on the beach, pick it up. That's something that you can do, because the trash is one of the ways that these sea turtles get injured, that their flippers get caught up, or parts of their body get caught up in the trash, and then they sometimes, if it's so tight, they've got to sever, remove that flipper." So while my daughter has this dream and to be a vet, we'll see about that, we'll hold that with her, that there's something small that she could do right now, that her little 5-year-old hands are capable of picking up some trash on the beach to make a difference. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, that we don't have to do something grand that seems like I've got to save the world. There's something right now that we can do every day that is going to make a difference for our world, that can be small and could save an animal's life, a person's life. We'll see how Spirit is guiding us. So let's consider now how we would live if our neighborhood was our temple. I know many of us you all probably been live streaming before you came into the pyramid, and then there are those of us who are connecting tonight by live stream, and we're doing our spiritual practice at home. And so our home has become our sanctuary and the place that we live. And so let's expand that idea, that our temple of our home, where we have our spiritual practice, that expands out into our neighborhood. So what would that look like? How would you treat your neighborhood differently? Maybe if you saw some branches on the sidewalk as you're taking your walk, you might move them over. You might notice if there is an animal on your road, call the SPCA and have them come out and help. You might pick up some trash that you find out, even if it's not on your own lawn, out in your neighborhood. Get to know your neighbors' names, celebrate birthdays, celebrate holidays together. It used to be that this practice of living as if your neighborhood was your temple was the kind of thing that monks and nuns did in Eastern practice in their monasteries, their temples, and even in Western contemplative practices in Europe, that this practice of really an inner devotional life took place in cloisters. And now the monastery, the temple, is really everywhere in the world, as we are all now aware of how to engage in spiritual life and spiritual practice. And so where we are is our temple. So I invite you to say with me, repeat after me, where I am is my temple. Where I am is my temple. I care for my neighborhood as my temple. Yes. I want to share with you a story that Jack Cornfield shared about his old guru in Bombay, who would teach his students in this practice. They would come to the temple to study with him, and he would allow them to stay long enough to get a genuine understanding of the spiritual practice, of liberation, the freedom in the midst of the practice of life, of love. And then he would send them home, and he would say this: marry the boy or the girl next door, get a job in your own community, and live your life as your practice. So it wasn't meant that we stay cloistered, stay inside, as we're moving and shifting from this time of being quarantined, spending a lot of time at home in our family life. Now we have this opportunity, hopefully for many of us who are vaccinated or are just making the choice to move out into life in a greater way, to find ways to serve beyond the four walls of our home. This is how we live with an undivided heart, is when we're able to see all of life as our spiritual practice and to live it with loving kindness and in the spirit of being wakefulness to all of the good and all the opportunities to be loving and of support. The traditional Buddhist view of reincarnation can be helpful to us as we are expanding our awareness of our neighborhood, our community, as a circle that includes all of us. And so there's this teaching that every person has been born many times and that we've all been each other's mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers. This is the Buddhist teaching, and lifetime after lifetime. And so we're instructed to treat every person as if they are a mother, a father, a sister, or a brother to us. And in Buddhist countries, it's very common to refer to everyone by some kind of honorific title, like they were a relative. So they might say Uncle President or Auntie Mayor or Uncle General, Grandfather Teacher. And this is indicative of their awareness that we really are all one family. So this living with an undivided heart is a practice of living our daily life, not just on the cushion or in our seat, but in all that we do as a meditation, as meditative. And the question that Jack Kornfield shares that comes up for many people who are working on this practice is, do I really have enough time? I'm busy. How am I going to do this all the time? And so his teacher, Ajahn Chah, shared that his response when he got this question was that his students were saying there's so much to do in the monastery. He would give them all assignments, and there would be sweeping, there would be greeting visitors who came to the monastery, there'd be chanting, there would be building, there would be cleaning, all kinds of things to do around the monastery. It didn't feel like there was enough time for practice. And his answer to them was, is there enough time to be awake? To be awake. So can we do each of these things that is ours to do in our life? Awake, mindful, open, engaged, not always listening to the chatter of the mind, being present to what is here now. Everything in life offers us the opportunity to awaken, and especially our challenges when we can learn to be present to them. Jack Kornfield shares that our family life, that children are a wonderful way to experience this temple of life being everywhere. That children, they bring us into the present moment again and again. I can't think of a time where I was more present in my life than when my daughter was an infant. And I was just with her every moment, and time seemed to expand, and she was just with me, and I was with her, and it was just long days, long nights. And we think that we may not always feel like meditating or doing spiritual practice or yoga or all the things that we do to support ourselves. When you have a child and the child is sick, your attention is right there. They wake up in the middle of the night, they need you, you're fully present there in support, and that's living with that undivided heart. That's what we're talking about being present to what is there for you. In many cultures, the raising of children to be wise and healthy is considered a spiritual act. A spiritual act. In our culture, we have television and daycare be our babysitters of our children. And the result is that, as Jack Kornfield tells us, is that they can tend to be needy and to feel like they are not as respected and loved and as much of the fabric of our lives as really we would want them to be. And so he shares with us how in Eastern culture that children are seen as potential artists and leaders and contributors to humanity. And they are not so much as we are in Western culture, where the focus is on the money making and getting the parents to work, that their focus is more on raising the children. Well, nowadays, children in our culture can tend to be raised by tablets and YouTube, right? And so they can become disconnected. There's this phenomena, I guess you could say, of children who are not able to easily express empathy in our Western culture, because the tablet or the device always being their way of communication. And so this is something we want to be aware of and to bring them into the fabric of our regular lives. He shares with us, Jack Kornfield, a story of when he took a family sabbatical to Bali and Thailand, and he took his 6-year-old daughter with him on this journey. Her name is Caroline, and he put her in a program to learn Balinese dance for 2 months. Can you imagine that? Wouldn't that be fun to get to do that, to go to another culture? And they're American. They went to Bali and to learn this dance. And so at the end of her program, her teacher invited him to come for a recital for her to get to dance, and she's 6 years old, and so he was just excited as a father to be there to support her. And so they pulled the stage out. They got the stage set up, and this was in the home of the dance teacher where he was teaching. That is where his studio was as well. They set up the stage and they prepared the music, and then they went to dress her. And so that was quite a process for her. So it took a long time for this 6-year-old, whose attention span was 5 minutes, if you know 6-year-olds. And they began to dress her, and they dressed her in this beautiful silk sarong. They put a beautiful chain around her waist, and then they wrapped embroidered silk around her chest 15 times, he said. They put gold armbands on her and bracelets, and they decorated her hair with a beautiful golden flower, and they put a lot of makeup on her. He said more makeup than a 6-year-old could ever really dream of wearing. So they really did her up for this event. And he's looking at his watch, and a half hour goes by, and 45 minutes goes by, and he's kind of getting impatient. When is this recital going to start? And how many things are they going to pile on to this child? And he came to realize, he shares, when he let go of his impatience, how much honor and respect that they gave to his daughter in preparing her in such a beautiful, luxurious way, that a wonderful thing happened. And she felt that she was treated like an artist. And so when it came time for her to dance, she danced beautifully out of this experience of having been loved and cherished in such a way. And so how would you feel if, as a child, you were given that kind of respect? That kind of honor. We can do this for our children, and we can do it for the child within ourselves. We can give that. If we hadn't received that as a child, we carry that younger self, all those younger selves with us, and we can give that to ourselves as well as we invite those younger selves into our awareness. It's said that the Buddha cultivated patience, respect, and compassion over 100,000 lifetimes. And so we can bring this patience, this respect, this compassion a bit of this into our family, into our love relationships. And so love relationships are a practice, just as meditation is a practice, and in our relationships, they require commitment, just as a regular seated meditation practice requires a regular commitment, daily commitment. Our marriages, our personal relationships require that commitment, that it goes beyond that, well, I commit to you as long as you kind of stay the same and we agree to stay together and you don't leave me and that kind of thing, that it's beyond that. There's a conscious commitment to the relationship, to making it work, to growing together and to honoring each other so much that you have the freedom to speak your differences, to speak what is alive for you. And it's natural that in a relationship over time, fear, judgment, aversion will arise as we face life struggles, as we face struggles in the relationships. We can get restless like we do in meditation. At the times when we try to sit and we can't sit still, where doubts fill our mind, well, that can happen in our relationships too. So how do we handle it on the seat, in our seated practice? And we witness and observe it and be with it with an open heart. And can we bring that same mindfulness into our personal relationships? That's what we're being called to do as we learn to live with an undivided heart and expand our circle. So expanding our circle requires a reverence for all of life. There are 5 basic precepts that Buddhism teaches in a practice to refrain from harming others with our speech and our actions. So I would like to share those with you. These are the 5. I undertake to refrain from killing and harming living beings. I undertake to refrain from stealing and taking that which is not mine. I undertake to refrain from causing harm through sexual misconduct. I undertake to refrain from false speech, harmful speech, gossip, and slander. I undertake to refrain from the misuse of intoxicants or substances such as alcohol or drugs that cause carelessness or loss of awareness. So we can see in these 5 basic precepts how they allow us to live in harmony with the earth, with each other, and in a way that supports life, in a way that allows us to live with an undivided heart. I want to close with one last story that was shared by Jack Kornfield that I found just to be so remarkable, and it was about the practice of these monks who followed Buddha, and part of their practice as Buddhist monks was that they were prohibited from cutting any plants or trees. And so they were realizing in these modern times that the forests of Asia were getting cut down, and there were forest monks, forest monasteries where they had their spiritual practice, and so there wasn't a place for them to do their practice out in nature the way they had been doing. And so what these wise meditation masters decided that they would do is that they took some villagers out into the forest, and they found the oldest wisdom tree that they could find, and they wrapped the tree in monks' robes all around the tree, and they ordained the tree. They ordained the tree as like it was a monk. And the beautiful thing about this is the Thai and the Burmese people so honored and had reverence for the ordination ceremony that they left that part of the forest alone. That area of the forest was saved. There's something like that we can each do to preserve the sanctity of our environment, of our family, our friends, our spiritual community, our city. That's small, and yet makes a profound difference. So as we live with an undivided heart, we follow that guidance, and we learn to let our life be our message. Namaste.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.